On my wedding night, I crawled beneath the honeymoon bed to scare my new wife. Then another woman entered, answered a call on speaker, and said something that turned marriage into evidence before it began. The carpet beneath the bed smelled like citrus cleaner and old roses. I lay flat on my back, one shoulder pressed against the wooden frame, staring at the underside of the mattress 6 inches above my face when the suite door clicked open. The shoes that entered were black patent leather pumps. They were not Elise's. My wife had kicked off her heels before dinner ended and changed into white satin flats. I remembered because I had knelt beside her chair and fastened the pearl strap around her ankle while she laughed and told me married life suited me already. For one stupid second, I assumed a hotel employee had come in. Then the door shut quietly. I had crawled beneath the bed 15 minutes earlier because Elise loved practical jokes. 3 years ago, she had hidden in the back seat of my truck and nearly made me hit a mailbox. I had promised to get her back when she least expected it. Our wedding night seemed perfect. I pictured her entering, calling my name, then screaming when I grabbed her ankle. Instead, I pressed my fist against my mouth and watched those unfamiliar shoes cross the hardwood. The woman stopped beside the bed. Fabric rustled. The mattress dipped above my chest as she sat down, close enough that the frame creaked beside my ear. A purse clasp snapped open. Something small struck the floor. Then a phone began ringing. "Of course you call now," the woman muttered. I knew that voice. Claudia Mercer, my new mother-in-law. The smile vanished from my face before I understood why. She answered while searching through her purse, and somehow the call switched to speaker. Another woman's voice filled the room, bright and distorted. "Are you alone?" Claudia glanced toward the bathroom. I saw only her heel turning against the floor. "He's still downstairs," she said. "We have a few minutes." Her tone changed. The warmth disappeared completely. My right leg had gone numb beneath me, but I did not move. The prank no longer mattered. Neither did the champagne, the music, or the guests waiting below. Then Claudia laughed softly and said my name. That was when I reached for my phone. Elise and I had been together for 6 years by the time we married. 4 years dating, 18 months engaged, and the rest buried under seating charts, vendor contracts, and arguments about whether anyone needed 3 kinds of cake. We met at a charity 10K in Asheville. I was there because my firm sponsored it. Elise was there because her younger brother dared her to run without training. She finished near the back, limping and laughing so hard she could barely take the water I offered her. That was Elise. She made embarrassment look fearless. I worked as a structural engineer, built around load calculations, failure points, and noticing what other people assumed would hold. Elise was a brand strategist for a hospitality group. She could enter a room and understand within minutes who wanted approval, who wanted control, and who was pretending not to want either. With me, she seemed softer. She remembered that I took coffee without sugar, kept protein bars in her car because I forgot to eat on job sites, and knew I went quiet when angry. She never pushed during those silences. She would sit beside me, touch 2 fingers to my wrist, and wait. That patience was one reason I trusted her. Claudia entered our relationship gradually. At first, she was attentive. She sent food when I worked late, remembered my father's birthday, and asked intelligent questions about bridge inspections. My mother died when I was 21, and my father never remarried. Our family loved each other, but we were not warm in the easy way Elise's family was. We handled problems privately. We rarely hugged without a reason. So when Claudia started calling me the son I should have had, I let it mean more than it should have. The prenuptial agreement came up 10 months before the wedding. My father's family owned several commercial properties and a controlling interest in a construction materials company my grandfather started in the 1970s. I did not run it, but I was the primary beneficiary of a family trust scheduled to release assets over 15 years. I wanted a prenup. Elise said she understood. Claudia supported it almost too quickly. She recommended an attorney named Malcolm Voss, describing him as a family friend who specialized in fair agreements that protect everyone. My father wanted our estate counsel to draft it instead. Claudia said using my family's attorney would make Elise feel as if she were negotiating against a boardroom. I did not want Elise to feel that way. So I agreed to Voss. The document was 83 pages long. Most looked standard: separate property, debt responsibility, disclosure schedules, inheritance protections. Buried in Article 7 was a clause stating that jointly designated gifts became irrevocable marital property after 8 months of marriage. I asked about it once. Claudia was slicing lemons in her kitchen. She did not look up. Routine vesting language, she said. It stops either spouse from taking back a wedding gift during the first argument. Elise kissed my cheek. Please don't make us discuss vesting over dinner. I laughed. My father did not. He read the clause twice, then asked who proposed it. When I told him, he went quiet in the way he did when trying not to turn concern into an order. Let our people review the final draft, he said. They already sent comments. Then let them review it again. I told him he was being protective. He said that was his job. 3 weeks before the wedding, he asked why Claudia knew so much about trust distributions. I said she had worked in private banking before becoming a school administrator. He stared at me, then changed the subject. On the wedding morning, he stood behind me while I fixed my cufflinks. If anything feels wrong, he said, you can still stop. I smiled. Nothing feels wrong. He hugged me longer than usual. There had been another warning. 9 days before the ceremony, an email arrived from Lena Park, the attorney administering my grandfather's trust. Subject: urgent questions regarding Article 7. I opened it while walking through an airport, read the first sentence, and marked it unread so I could return later. I never did. Lying beneath that hotel bed, listening to Claudia say my name with contempt, I remembered that email. For the first time, I understood that everyone I trusted had seen a crack in the foundation except me. Claudia's voice came through the speaker like someone discussing a plan already completed. Don't worry, she said. Daniel is still downstairs making rounds with his father's clients. Elise has him exactly where she wants him. For 1 second, I told myself she meant another Daniel. There were 2 in the ballroom. One was a college friend. The other was me. Then the woman on the phone laughed. You really pulled it off? Claudia lowered her voice, but every word reached me beneath that bed. Of course I did. He trusts her completely. That's the whole reason he was useful. Useful. Not loved. Not chosen. Useful. My hand was already inside my jacket, reaching for my phone. I found it by touch, lowered the brightness, and pressed record without looking. The timer moved. I did not stop it. Claudia kept talking. Elise almost backed out in January, she said. She got sentimental. Started saying he was kind and that maybe she could actually build a life with him. My lungs locked. The woman on the call said something I couldn't make out. Claudia answered with a contemptuous laugh. I reminded her that kindness doesn't pay off her brother's debt, and it doesn't rebuild what her father left us with. That was the first revelation. Elise knew. Maybe she had hesitated, maybe some part of her cared, but she knew there was a plan, and she had stood beside me at the altar anyway. Then Claudia moved to the second part. He signed Voss's agreement exactly as written, she said. He thinks the trust is protected because the document says inherited assets remain separate. He never understood the gift conversion language. My fingers tightened around the phone. The 8-month clause. Claudia continued, almost proudly. Once they stay married 8 months, anything transferred into both names becomes permanent marital property. The first trust distribution is scheduled 2 weeks after that. By then, Elise will have leverage over the whole negotiation. The woman on the phone asked how much. Just under $14 million on the first release. The number landed without shape at first. $14 million was too large to feel real beneath a hotel bed with my left foot going numb. Then I remembered Lena Park's email. Urgent questions regarding Article 7. I had carried the warning in my pocket for 9 days and never opened it. Claudia was not finished. The mountain house is already handled, she said. His father transferred it to both of them as a wedding gift. Appraised at 1.6 last year, probably worth more now. That was the third revelation. The house outside Boone had belonged to my grandparents before I was born. My grandfather taught me to split firewood behind it. My mother's initials were still carved beneath the porch rail from when she was 16. My father had put Elise's name beside mine because I asked him to. I had called it symbolic. Claudia called it handled. The woman on the phone whistled. And the company shares? Claudia paused long enough that I could hear her adjusting something inside her purse. That's the real prize. The fourth revelation came in her calmest voice. When Martin dies, Daniel receives the remaining voting shares and control of the family trust. Conservatively, $38 million, maybe more if the new plant opens on schedule. Elise only has to stay convincing until she has enough legal position to force a settlement. $38 million. My father was 63, healthy, and standing downstairs at my wedding while my new mother-in-law discussed his death like a date on a financial calendar. My heart started beating so hard I feared the mattress would carry the sound. Then Claudia said the thing that hurt more than every number. You should have seen him during the vows. His voice actually broke. She laughed. He looked at her like she had saved his life. Honestly, it was embarrassing. The woman on the phone laughed with her. Claudia went on. Elise won't even have to try hard. A few affectionate weekends, enough photographs, maybe talk about starting a family if he gets suspicious. Men like Daniel don't see what's happening once they feel needed. My throat closed. 5 years of coffee left on my desk. 5 years of her fingers touching my wrist when I went quiet. 5 years of hearing her say I was the first man who made her feel safe. Maybe some of it had been real. But under that bed, with my mother-in-law laughing above me, every memory changed shape. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. And I kept recording. The call lasted 9 minutes. Claudia talked about timelines, lawyers, and how long Elise needed to keep me calm before making a move. She said they would wait until the first trust distribution cleared, then manufacture a reason for distance. Work stress, my temper, emotional neglect, something ordinary enough to sound believable. By the time she ended the call, I had 11 minutes and 18 seconds of audio saved on my phone. The heels crossed the floor again. The suite door opened, then shut. I stayed under the bed for several more seconds because my body had stopped obeying me. My right leg was numb. My hands were shaking. When I finally crawled out, my cuff link caught the bed skirt and tore the fabric loose. I sat on the edge of the mattress where Claudia had been sitting and called Nathan Hale. Nathan had handled my family's contracts for 20 years. He had known me since high school and had reviewed every trust amendment my father signed. It was almost 10 at night, but he answered on the third ring. Daniel, I need you to listen to something. He heard my voice and stopped asking questions. I sent the recording. For the first 30 seconds after the file delivered, I stared at the wedding band on my hand. It looked foreign already, like something left behind by another man. Nathan called back before the audio finished. Where are you? In the honeymoon suite. And Elise? Downstairs. You've been married, what, for hours? About that. He exhaled. Do not confront anyone yet. Do not delete the original file. Email it to me, then back it up where Claudia cannot access it. Can this undo the prenup? This may undo more than the prenup. His tone changed. Less concern, more calculation. If Voss drafted that agreement while coordinating with Claudia and Elise to misrepresent the purpose of Article 7, we are looking at fraud in the inducement. The joint property transfer may also be challenged. I need to review the signed documents tonight. Then he went quiet. There's something else you should know. My stomach tightened again. Your father contacted me 2 weeks ago. He had hired a private investigator named Warren Shaw. I stood up too quickly and had to catch myself against the dresser. My father hired an investigator? He was worried about Claudia's financial history. She presented herself as independent, but things didn't line up. Old judgments, a dissolved consulting company, property records connected to relatives instead of her. Nathan paused. Warren sent a preliminary report 3 days ago. Why didn't anyone tell me? Your father wanted proof before he accused the family of the woman you were about to marry. He thought if he was wrong, he would destroy your relationship for nothing. I closed my eyes. Every careful question Martin had asked came back at once. Nathan continued. Warren found a previous engagement. I already knew whose. Elise's? 5 years ago, a man named Caleb Ross. His family owned medical clinics outside Raleigh. Claudia pushed a prenup drafted by the same attorney. There was also a proposed transfer of a vacation property into joint ownership. The room seemed to tilt. What happened? Caleb's attorney caught a vesting clause before the wedding. The engagement ended quietly. Confidential settlement. No public complaint. Same attorney. Same clause. Same type of family. I looked toward the closed suite door and understood that I had not discovered one bad decision made under pressure. I had discovered a method. Nathan's voice softened. Daniel, you are not the first man they tried this on. I stared at the phone in my hand. No, I said, I'm just the first one who recorded them admitting it. Nathan sent me the preliminary report while we were still on the phone. I read it standing beside the hotel window, the ballroom lights reflected in the glass behind my own face. Claudia had been married once before. 24 years earlier, her husband left after nearly 3 decades together. Most of the property had been titled through businesses she did not control, and the divorce settlement gave her far less than she believed she had earned. Within 2 years, her ex remarried into another wealthy family. According to Warren's notes, Claudia had spent the years afterward telling friends that love without financial protection was just dependency with better lighting. I understood the shape of her anger. I did not forgive what she had done with it. Nathan brought me back to the present. North Carolina follows one-party consent, he said. You were physically present, and the conversation concerned you. Preserve the original file, the metadata, and every message connected to it. And the marriage? We can petition for annulment based on fraud, but I'm not promising a courtroom outcome tonight. What I can tell you is that this recording gives us a serious basis to challenge the prenup, the joint gift, and Voss's conduct. His caution helped more than certainty would have. It made the situation feel real, not like some revenge fantasy where one phone call solved everything. Claudia had built her plan from an old wound. But she had still chosen me as the person who would pay for it without my consent. I opened Lena Park's email while Nathan stayed on the line. The first paragraph was polite. The second was not. Daniel, Article 7 does not operate like gift protection language. It creates a delayed conversion of jointly titled assets after 8 months of marriage and may expose trust distributions that should remain separate. Do not sign until we speak. Below it were 2 unanswered follow-ups. I called the number in her signature. She answered immediately. Daniel, is something wrong? I signed it. Silence. Then, carefully, tell me what happened. I read the clause aloud and sent her the recording. She listened without interrupting. When she came back, her voice was flat in the way professionals sound when anger has been forced into discipline. That is the provision I flagged. It is not standard. If Claudia's attorney drafted it knowing Elise intended to use the marriage to reach your assets, that changes everything. I saw your email. I know. I marked it unread. Another pause. I tried twice, she said, not cruelly. That hurt worse. I had not been trapped because nobody warned me. My father, Nathan, and the woman paid to protect the trust had tried. I had chosen love over every alarm. I ended the call with Lena and stood in the center of the suite, listening to the muffled music rising through the floor. A few hours earlier, I had promised Elise that she would never have to wonder whether I was on her side. Now I was trying to decide whether to destroy her in front of everyone she knew. My first instinct was to take her somewhere private, pull her into an empty hallway, play the recording once, ask one question. Was any of it real? I kept seeing her at the altar, gripping both my hands so tightly that her knuckles had gone white. Her voice had broken during the vows. She had looked terrified, relieved, and completely in love. I wanted that version of her to be real. That was the part one hated most. If every moment had been false, then I could walk away cleanly. Anger would have been enough. But Claudia had said Elise nearly backed out because she had become sentimental. She had called me kind. She had wondered whether she could build a life with me. That meant there might have been something real inside the lie. It did not make the betrayal smaller. It made it harder to understand. I imagined taking Elise outside, away from the ballroom, and giving her one final chance to tell me the truth before anyone else heard it. We could end the marriage quietly. My father could freeze the property transfer. Nathan could file the papers. The guests would go home thinking we had suffered some private disaster. I would keep my dignity. So would she. Then I pictured what would happen next. Claudia would tell people I had panicked over the prenup. Elise would cry and say my family had never accepted her. Malcolm Voss would call the clause a misunderstanding. By morning, the story would become a nervous groom humiliating his bride because he was afraid of sharing money. They had already planned how to make me the villain after 8 months. Why would they stop now? I looked at my reflection in the dark window. My bow tie was crooked. There was dust on one shoulder of my tuxedo from the floor beneath the bed. I looked less like a groom than a man who had crawled out of the wreckage of something. Publicly exposing Elise would humiliate me too. 300 people had watched me cry while I promised her my life. But silence would let Claudia rewrite what happened. I was not ready to forgive Elise. I was not even sure I hated her. I only knew I would not let them turn my trust into evidence against me. Not after what I had heard. What decided it was not anger? It was the thought of Claudia leaving that ballroom with enough control to reshape the night before sunrise. She would tell everyone I had panicked over money. Elise would become the bride abandoned by a cold, suspicious husband. Malcolm Voss would call Article 7 a harmless misunderstanding. By Monday, the truth would already be buried under a cleaner story. And then, someday, Claudia would try it again. Another man, another family, Another agreement designed to look protective until the right date passed. I could leave quietly and save myself the spectacle. Or I could make sure the scheme ended in the room where they believed it had succeeded. I backed up the recording twice, sent one copy to Nathan, and texted my father 3 words. Freeze the house. His reply came almost immediately. Already moving. I straightened my bow tie, wiped the dust from my shoulder, and looked once at the bed. I had entered that suite as a husband planning a joke. I walked out carrying the evidence. The elevator doors opened onto the mezzanine, and the music reached me before the ballroom did. A string quartet was playing something bright. Guests laughed beyond the double doors. Glasses clinked. Someone cheered near the dance floor. A bellman passed and smiled at my tuxedo. Congratulations. Thank you, I said automatically. The words felt borrowed. My phone sat heavy inside my jacket, holding 11 minutes and 18 seconds that could end the marriage before the cake was cut. I stopped outside the ballroom and listened to Elise laughing inside. For 1 second, my hand stayed on the door. Then I forced my face into the smile she expected, stepped through, and let her believe the surprise was meant for her. The ballroom looked exactly as I had left it. Light from the chandeliers, white flowers on every table, servers moving between guests with champagne. Near the dance floor, one of Elise's cousins was laughing so hard she had to hold a chair. Nobody knew the marriage had ended upstairs. Elise saw me and came toward me, lifting the front of her dress. There you are, she said. The DJ's waiting. We're supposed to do the first dance. Her cheeks were flushed. Her eyes were bright. She looked happy. That almost stopped me. I have something first, I said. A surprise? She smiled exactly as I had pictured while hiding beneath the bed. Something like that. I walked to the DJ booth and held out my hand for the microphone. He hesitated, then gave it to me. I tapped it once. The speakers popped. The quartet faded into silence. Conversations broke apart table by table until 300 people were looking at me. Elise stepped beside me and slipped her hand into mine. Across the room, Claudia stood near the cake, smiling. I looked at my father. He gave me one small nod. Thank you all for being here, I said. My voice sounded steadier through the speakers than it felt inside my chest. A wedding is supposed to begin with trust, with honesty, with 2 people choosing each other without hidden terms. Elise's fingers tightened around mine. Her smile changed first. Not much, just enough. About an hour ago, I continued, I went upstairs because I wanted to surprise my wife. Claudia stopped smiling. I reached into my jacket for my phone. I lifted the phone so everyone could see it. While I was upstairs, I said, someone entered the honeymoon suite. She thought she was alone. She took a call. The speaker was on. Elise's hand left mine. Daniel, she whispered. Claudia moved away from the cake table. I pressed play. Her voice filled the ballroom. Daniel is still downstairs making rounds with his father's clients. Elise has him exactly where she wants him. The first reaction was not a gasp. It was silence, sudden and complete. Then the recording continued. He signed Voss's agreement exactly as written. He thinks the trust is protected. A chair scraped somewhere near the front. Claudia pushed through 2 tables. Turn that off. I did not look at her. The audio moved through the 8-month clause, the $14 million distribution, and the mountain house already placed in both our names. Guests began lifting their phones. At Claudia's table, 2 women shifted away from her. One of Elise's uncles lowered his champagne glass without taking his eyes off the stage at all. Elise grabbed my sleeve. Please stop. I let the recording play. Claudia's voice reached the part about my father's death and the remaining 38 million. My father stood motionless near the back of the room. Then came the laughter. You should have seen him during the vows. His voice actually broke. I heard myself being called useful, easy to manage, a man who only needed to feel wanted. The recording ended. For several seconds, nobody moved. Elise's face had lost all color. Tears had started cutting narrow lines through her makeup. I can explain, she said. The microphone was still live. Then explain. Her eyes moved across the room as if there was somewhere left to hide. My mother had a plan, she said. I knew about the clause. I knew what she wanted. A sound went through the crowd. But I did love you. I looked at her. Did you marry me for me, or for 8 months? She covered her mouth. I thought I could stay long enough to make it real. That answer hurt more than a denial would have. I looked out at the guests, then back at the woman I had married 4 hours earlier. You did make it real, I said, just not in the way you promised. Claudia reached the stage before anyone could stop her. That recording is illegal, she said. Her voice was sharp, but the color had drained from her face. You hid in a private room and recorded a conversation that was never meant for you. I looked at her. You entered my honeymoon suite and discussed defrauding me. That is not what happened. It is exactly what everyone just heard. She turned toward the crowd instead of answering me. This is a family matter. Daniel is emotional. He has misunderstood legal language he was never qualified to interpret. That was when Lena Park stood up from a table near the dance floor. She had changed out of the navy suit I usually saw her wear and into a green dress, but her voice was the same one I had heard in conference rooms when someone tried to hide a risk inside polite language. I reviewed Article 7 before it was signed, she said. The clause was not routine, and I warned Daniel in writing that it could convert jointly titled property after 8 months. Claudia stared at her. You have no standing here. I administer the trust the clause was designed to reach. The room shifted. People who had been watching the stage began looking at Claudia instead. Lena continued. If the drafting attorney created that provision while knowing the marriage was being used to obtain access to protected assets, that raises serious questions about fraud, disclosure, and professional misconduct. I will be preserving the recording and filing a formal complaint. Malcolm Voss was not in the ballroom. For the first time that night, Claudia seemed to realize he would not be arriving to save her. You are all making a mistake, she said. Elise was going to be his wife. She had every right to security. Security requires consent, Lena replied. Deception does not create consent. Claudia looked around for support. One of her closest friends lowered her eyes. Elise's uncle stepped away from the stage. Even the guests still filming had stopped whispering. The room had chosen who it believed. Claudia turned back to me, quieter now. You have no idea what you are throwing away. I held her gaze. I know exactly what I'm walking away from. My father lowered his phone and stepped forward. The Mountain House transfer is frozen, he said. Nathan filed an emergency notice 5 minutes ago. Nothing moves until the court reviews the fraud claim. Elise stared at him, then at me. You can't erase our marriage because of one conversation. No, I said. Your choices did that. Her voice cracked. Daniel, please. We can fix this. I looked at the ring on my hand, then pulled it off. Nathan is filing for annulment Monday morning. He's challenging the prenup, the property transfer, and every agreement tied to Article 7. Claudia started toward us, but nobody made room for her. Elise shook her head. You can't do this. I placed the ring beside the microphone. I already did. I handed the microphone back to the DJ and stepped down from the stage. No one spoke. I walked past the cake we would never cut, past the tables where guests held their phones in the air, past Claudia standing alone near the dance floor. Elise said my name once. I did not turn around. Outside, the night air hit my face cold and clean. I loosened my bow tie as I crossed the parking lot, still wearing the tuxedo I had married her in 4 hours earlier. By sunrise, it would be evidence. I kept walking,